Hello everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the M4 Mac Mini and compare it against the Intel Mac Mini that came out in 2018 and see which particular Mac is a better one for you. Now, the thing I can definitely tell you, in my personal opinion, is that if you are going to go through and get any sort of Mac, the latest and greatest Mac Mini is going to be a better one than the older one, especially when we're comparing a 6-year-old Mac Mini like the Intel Mac Mini is against the latest and greatest that just came out. So if you do want to pick up the latest and greatest Mac or one of the newer ones for a better price than what you may be able to find, I'll go and leave some links down in the description. You can get that from there and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of both these Mac Minis, the Intel Mac Mini, which came out back in 2018, there were a lot of Intel Mac Minis before this, but this one was one of the last ones. And it was an interesting one because it was kind of a design change. So it was a pretty big Mac for the most part. It was this space gray model which looked so sick. I wish Apple were to bring it back, but they just still haven't brought it back yet. And you were getting the Apple logo at the very top. You're getting your, standard, sides. It was a pretty similar looking Mac Mini to a lot of newer ones too. The thing with this Mac Mini though, which was really, really cool, was that you were essentially getting a lot of ports at that time, which was a really cool thing. So on the back side, all the ports were on the back. You're getting 4 Thunderbolt 3 USB Type-C ports. So that in and of itself was really nice. You were getting 2 USB-A ports, an HDMI port, and a gigabit or 10 gigabit Ethernet port. So that was a really nice thing going on back in 2018, and still even getting 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports back then was a really nice thing as well. So personally for me, I think that was a super sick thing, and I'm super happy they ended up doing something like that. With the M4 Mac Mini, you can kind of tell that this is a little bit of a different type of design, right? This thing does look a little bit different than the Intel Mac Mini. So this is another redesign. So what Apple ended up doing here was they really shrunk down this Mac. Like, this thing looks very, very different than the other Macs that we've seen before. And within this type of device, you're essentially getting a Mac Mini that is going to be giving you 2 USB Type-C ports on the front. So that already is a really big change. Basically going from a Mac that all the ports were on the backside to now at least giving you some ports on the front. I actually love that a lot, and I'm a big, massive fan of that as well. So that is in and of itself a super nice thing going on for this type of device. Now, on top of that, another very big thing going on here too is that with the Mac Mini, the M4 model, you're getting 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports on the back, or if you're getting the M4 Pro model, you're getting 3 Thunderbolt 5 ports. So once again, that's another really nice thing. You can spec it out whichever way you want to. You're getting an HDMI port on the M4 Mac Mini, and you're getting the same type of gigabit or 10 gigabit Ethernet port there as well. So that kind of stuff is super nice to have inside of a device like the M4 Mac Mini. The ports are better. They just work better as well. And that is a really, really important thing to kind of keep in mind. If you're going to go through and get a device, it makes a lot more sense to get the newest one that's probably going to be giving you more features and more just better capability overall than something like the Intel Mac Mini as of this point. So once again, kind of keep that in mind. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but that is one thing you're definitely going to be noticing if you're going to go through and get one of these devices, because it's definitely going to be a better manageable machine inside of the M4 Mac Mini than the Intel Mac Mini. Now, another very big thing to keep in mind is the price tag. The M4 Mac Mini is brand new and it's $600. That is a pretty good price to pay for a device like this. It's not the most expensive thing in the world. It's a very competitive price, and like I mentioned before, I think that's a very, very nice price to pay for something like this. With the Intel Mac Mini, this thing was a brand new device. You could buy it in the brand new market. Unfortunately, it is no longer available to be bought brand new anymore. So that is kind of another thing going on here as well. Like, if you wanted to go through and get a new device, you would have to kind of go through and get an Intel Mac Mini in the used market or somewhere along those lines, because they're just not available in the brand new market anymore. So that is in and of itself kind of a little bit of a downside going on for that device. Again, not the biggest deal in the world, but that would be one thing you would theoretically kind of run into, and one problem you would run into if you're going to go through and get that type of device as well. So once again, kind of keep that in mind there. Now, on top of that, when it comes down to the capability behind the Intel Mac Mini, one feature that I actually like a lot about the Intel Macs is that they are basically giving you this really cool feature when it comes down to the Windows Boot Camp. So you do have the capability of basically going through and getting Windows Boot Camp installed on your machine, which is like a fully fledged Windows operating system. That's a really nice thing to have inside of that type of device. We don't really have that. We have virtual machines and everything like that inside of our inside of our, M4 Mac Mini, but they're not quite as nice, I would say, as the Intel ones. So that is kind of one thing to keep in mind. If you're doing a lot of like Windows, Windows development at all, then that would be one thing and one area you would look at inside of the Intel Mac Mini that might be having an advantage. Another thing is the performance. So when you're comparing the performance of an Intel machine to Apple Silicon, it's not really even that close. Apple Silicon is going to be giving you a way better performing machine than something like, the Intel sides as of this point for Apple machines, right? So when you're looking at the M series of chipsets, right, you could go ahead and spec out the M4 Mac Mini up to 14 core on their CPU, where in the Intel Mac Mini, you're only tapped out at 6 cores. On top of that, when you're comparing essentially everything else about them, again, it's going to be a better experience inside of something like the M4 Mac Mini. You can get up to 64 gigabytes of RAM on both though, which is actually fairly interesting. So even though the Intel Mac Mini came out so many years ago, you do have the capability of speccing out that Intel Mac Mini up to 64 gigabytes of RAM on both. So that is kind of a big advantage on both as well. You can get up to 8 terabytes of storage on the M4 Mac Mini, or you can get up to 2 terabytes of storage on the Intel Mac Mini. So that right there is another pretty big advantage too for something like the, for the M4 Mac Mini. But even though on paper it may seem like things are very similar in some cases, the M4 Mac Mini is going to be giving you a way better, way more powerful machine when it comes down to it, rather than something like an Intel Mac Mini. I think the Intel Mac Mini, for the price and for everything like that, I think it's like pretty solid. It's not like a terrible machine by any means at all. I think Apple did a good job with that type of machine again when it first came out, and I do think that in and of itself is a very nice thing. However, as I mentioned before, with these types of devices, what ends up happening is that sometimes it might just make a little bit more sense to go and buy a different device. And with the Intel one, I just don't think it really makes a lot of sense to go and buy it anymore. Although you're still getting a lot of ports inside of that device, you're still getting a very powerful machine. I've always felt like it just makes more sense to go and buy something that's going to be giving you a little bit more capability. And with something like the Intel Mac, it just doesn't really make a lot of sense to go and buy it in my personal opinion. Like I said, I think it makes more sense to go and buy something like a, M4 Mac Mini in this case. And even from a price tag standpoint, you're able to go and buy the M4 Mac Mini right now in the used market. Like, some people may think it's like a better deal here and there, but I'm telling you, it just makes a lot more sense to go and buy something like a, M4 Mac Mini from a price tag standpoint, performance standpoint, basically every single area you can kind of imagine it. So in my personal opinion, what I'd probably say is that a device like an M4 Mac Mini is a really good machine. It's definitely my go-to machine right now. And that is the one I'd probably recommend the vast majority of people to go and pick up. It makes a lot more sense to go and buy something like that than something like a standard Intel Mac Mini. I think the Intel Mac Mini is still decent. Like, I'm actually still pretty surprised about it. But if you are in the market and you are going to go and pick up a device, like I said before, I think it makes a lot more sense to go and buy something like a M4 Mac Mini in this case than an Intel one. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there for the most part. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.